Hello friends, welcome back to my channel and to another Plan With Me video. This week we are memory planning the week that was January 8th through to January 14th, and we are using yet another Scribble Prints Code kit. I was super excited to use this kit, and I decided to use this kit because I actually was reading a little bit at this point. So every year I'm like, I want to read 12 books, like one a month, can't be that hard. And every year I fail to read like even one for the most part. But this year I wanted to really meet this goal, and I started reading some books. But that's also because one of my brothers gifted me the Britney Spears biography for Christmas, and I really wanted to read that. So I started reading that. And I think I'm just looking if I actually marked. I don't think I did. I'm looking at my spread now and I'm like, oh yeah, surely somewhere here I would have marked like that I started reading my books, but I did not mark any reading. Oh no, I did. Sorry. On Sunday, I finished reading the Britney Spears biography. So that's the only thing that I mark on this spread. But for the sake of the fact that I wanted to use a book kit and that I was starting to read and that I had a goal of reading a certain amount of books by the end of this year, and, you know, trying to be mindful of what kits I'm using when, I decided that I was going to use this kit. I mean, I probably could have saved it for another occasion, but I feel like I actually have a couple of like bookish kits in my collection now, and I don't know when I'm going to use them because like I don't really go to like book signings. I don't read a lot of books. I'm not part of any like book clubs or anything. So this is probably the closest that I was going to get to being able to use a book kit. So we're just going to roll with it. Okay. Okay, good. But yeah, as I said, this was a Scribble Prints Co. mystery kit. I'm not sure what mystery kit it was, and I'm also using the like matte bronze foil that came with it. And I just think it turned out like it's very neutral, but I think it turned out really well, and I think it kind of complements nicely off of the back of my New Year's spread. For anyone who watched my New Year's spread, you will know that I was talking about like fiddling with layouts, still trying to get everything, you know, worked out, spacing, all of that. So my sidebar on this particular spread is also a little bit of a mess, because in this kit we did have the tall box, which is essentially two full boxes stacked. So I wanted to use that, and then I of course used another full box at the top. But then I also wanted to track my socials, and I also wanted to start marking like a highlight of the week in 2024. So whilst I do fit all of that in, you will see that contrasting the previous spread, the sidebar actually takes up majority of the like page and covers half of the January monthly script. And as of right now, I still haven't fixed that, but basically what I did to combat that was I purchased some monthly scripts from Planiface, and my idea was that I was just gonna plop that monthly script over the top and kind of like cover that January January header, sorry. Still haven't done that. Do have the scripts. And then the following week I actually changed up how I do my sidebar completely, so I ended up not needing those scripts. I used one, or I will use one, and that's a whole big thing, but there's that. And I guess the other thing I probably could have done was, instead of using a half box for the highlight of my week, I could have used like a quarter box or a like third box, and things probably would have fit a lot better. But again, like moving into next week, my sidebar changes up again, and I kind of just play around with my sidebar for a little while. And as I get to the end of 2024, I end up, I think, only putting a highlight of the week in the sidebar. But yeah, we'll obviously go through that when we get to it. So I'm just finished laying down my base at the moment. The good thing about Scribble Prints Code kits is that I'm very used to the format of them. Same with Planiface, so they're like my two go-to stores. Majority of my kits are from Planiface, but I'm currently subscribed to the mystery sub for SPC, but I do think I'm going to unsubscribe after the January mystery comes out for 2025. So there is that. So yeah, sidebar covered. Let's go ahead and move on to Monday in attempts to keep up. So the first thing that I marked on Monday was that I had a lazy morning. I don't think I mentioned it in my previous video, but I was on annual leave at this point. I don't think I went back to work. Yeah, I didn't go back to work until the following Monday, which is weird because I feel like normally I do like a half day. Am I lying? No? Okay. Yeah, because normally when I go back for the new year, I'll do like a half week. So I'll do like 2.5 weeks off or 3.5 weeks off and go back like midweek so that I kind of have like a slow week and then come back to a full week. But it looks as though I decided that I was going to go back on a Monday, which is, yeah, very strange. So I was off this week, so I marked having a lazy morning on Monday morning. I did mark having a cup of coffee. I marked that I had a little YouTube binge and that I chilled with my little doggos. I then marked folding some laundry, and then to finish out the evening, I marked that I binged Firefly Lane until 2 a.m. I had basically binged my way through the season, and I think the new season had come out by this point. And I like watched as many episodes as I could into the morning, obviously. I love it. Very sad, very emotional. So if you haven't seen it yet, I do highly recommend it, but take your tissue boxes. There's a lot to it, but I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, watch that until 2 a.m. Then on Tuesday morning, at the top of the day there, I've marked Hello Flo because Flo decided to greet me with her presence. And then I marked that I finished Firefly Lane on this day. So I finished like everything on that day. There were lots of tears, like I said. I then marked that I had cramps, that I did some laundry, and then I had to call my IVF clinic. So for anyone who has been following along and watching my recent Plan With Me videos, you know that I will have mentioned IVF a couple of times now. We had our orientation in December. We met our specialist in December, and basically he like wanted to move very quickly. I got a bunch of blood tests done, and he basically said like as soon as your period starts in January, because their clinic closes from mid-December through to mid-January-ish or early January, but he said when you get your next bleed to call the clinic and we will start our first IVF cycle. So I called the clinic on this day because Flo came this day and scheduled in my first blood test for the following morning. And basically what they do is they will, on that first appointment, they check your bloods, they check your hormone levels, and provided that they're at like a baseline for, you know, that time of the month, they'll either give you the go ahead or not to start your injections. And then the cycle for an egg collection, which is what we needed to do, lasts about 2 weeks. So from that first blood test to when they actually do the egg collection procedure is about 2 weeks. And then your blood tests can be every second day, every single day. It just depends on your hormone levels and how they fluctuate and how your body reacts to the medication. So I called the clinic to start our very first cycle. I then marked having a cup of coffee, and then I marked that I watched Sweet Tooth, which is another Netflix series. Very different, very interesting, very cutesy, but also very sad. Also recommend, but I was watching that this day. Wednesday, I did mark that I had to get up early because blood tests for IVF do need to be done before 9 o'clock, because then they get the results and they do the pathology and you get your results the same day. So for me, at that point in time, I didn't know that I could get my bloods taken at the clinic 25 minutes from my house. So we were actually driving 45 minutes on a good day, probably about an hour in traffic. So we were getting up at about 6 o'clock in the morning for like an 8 a.m. blood test, which was absolutely insane and just so tiring. So I marked that we had an early start. I then marked that we had a blood test. Well, I had a blood test, and blood tests are never fun for me because I have really tricky, deep, thin veins. So it's always like a 2 or 3 attempt situation. I then marked that I got coffee on the way home, and then I binge watched, I'm assuming, Sweet Tooth, but I obviously wanted to use the foil from the kit. I then marked that I started my stims, so I got the call from my clinic to say that my blood levels were good and to start my injections that night. So I started, I think in my first cycle I had 2 injections and then ended up on 3 by mid-cycle. So I started my needles, and I'm a huge needle phobe. They terrify me. I wanted to try and inject myself, and that night when I tried, I just couldn't. It made me feel nauseous. So my husband has done every single injection since, which obviously puts a lot of pressure on him as well. And you know, you've got to do it a certain way, at a certain angle. There's a lot to factor into it. I feel like I didn't leave enough time in this voiceover to kind of go into more detail about all of this stuff with you guys. So if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to share below. But I do also share my very raw, very real feelings about all of this stuff on TikTok under the account Ms. Luxito, MSLUXITO, if you want to follow along. I then marked that I played Sims and Jurassic World and that I uploaded a video that night. Then on to Thursday, I marked that I had waxing this day, that I got myself a cup of coffee, and then I had to get my acrylic nails removed because a part of the IVF process when you undergo the egg collection surgery, they need to be able to put one of those little detectors on your fingers and read your pulse, essentially, or whatever it is they do, and they can't do that apparently through gel or acrylic. So I had my acrylic nails removed. You'll probably see that in some of the videos that I've posted recently. I had very short nails. That is why, because I no longer have acrylics. I then marked that I went to Chemist Warehouse. I had a buffalo slaw and salad for lunch. And then when I got home, I played Jurassic World, washed some clothes, and watched some more Sweet Tooth. On Friday, I had another sleep in. I marked filming. I finished Sweet Tooth. I had a YouTube binge. I chilled out with the doggos, and then hubby and I watched Hills Have Eyes 2. On Saturday, I had my second blood test for the cycle. So in an egg collection cycle, your first blood test is on the first day or the second day of your period, so the first day after full flow, and then you have one at the end of your period. So my next one was on the Saturday. Again, we had to drive that hour. I had to get pricked and prodded and, pin cushioned until they could find my veins. We then went and got some breakfast after that just to treat ourselves and to obviously alleviate a little bit of that stress and trauma. And then we did a little bit of shopping. I don't know what we shopped for, but I marked shopping. I, of course, got a coffee. And then I got a call from the clinic to say that I needed to start my second injection. So on night one, when I started my first lot of injections, it was just the one, and then it increased to 2 on this day. So I was doing 2 injections every night. I then started watching The Maid on Netflix. Again, very short series, very good series, very emotional series. And then that night we watched Terrifier All Hallows Eve. And then on to Sunday, I marked that I had some planning time. I binged The Maid. I finished the Britney Spears biography, like I mentioned earlier. That night I made spaghetti for dinner, and then I started reading Verity from Colleen Hoover. Not sure how I feel about that. I feel like the twist was good, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it overall. And then I marked that I started my second lot of injections. So, yeah, like I said, I guess it wasn't really an eventful week, but this was the first cycle of IVF for us. So January, a week after I had had gastro. So probably not very good timing, because in an ideal world, you don't want to have gastro and then start stims the week later, because you kind of want to be in optimal health. I've kind of learned that more going through the process now. But yeah, that was kind of a very eventful week. Exciting and scary. Exciting in the fact that I was like, this is it. I'm going to have my baby, cycle number 1. I'm going to be one of the lucky people. We're going to do 1 cycle, 1 transfer, get pregnant. So yeah, it was very exciting, but it was obviously very daunting because, like I said, not only was I doing 2 injections, but after that second blood test on the Saturday, the blood tests get more regular. So like I said, generally every second day. So you're doing 2 needles a night at a certain time, and then you're going and getting bloods drawn every second day. And for me, someone who has such tricky, deep, small veins, I have to tell every new nurse that I see the same thing to prepare them. And then it ends up being a really traumatic experience, because drawing my blood, it's either 2 attempts or 3 attempts. They try my arms before they move to my hands. It's just like a whole big thing. And it's just, I have so much trauma from blood tests, and it's a lot. And not to mention the fact that you have to get up so early. So even on a Saturday, we're still getting up at 6:37 in the morning to get to the clinic to make sure that bloods are done before 9 a.m. So it's just a lot. But again, you'll get more information as the year progresses, because this was only cycle 1. And they do say that cycle 1 is like an experimentation, which is insane because the full cycle is like $12,000 odd. You do get money back from Medicare, and if you have health insurance does help you to cover some hospital fees and things like that. But it is a very, very expensive out-of-pocket cost. So I'm very, very lucky to be in a position to do that. But when they tell you it's an experimental round to see how your body reacts to the stims and to see what kind of results you get after one stim cycle, by stims I mean injections, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. It's very tiring. It's daunting. It's traumatic. It's a lot to process, just for them to say it's a trial, essentially. So yeah. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all very, very soon for another video. Bye.